This is the second episode of Shed Talks. We've got Goof, we've got Adam French, and we've got Dale Kirby. How's it going, guys?
Very good.
Number two, because, and I'll say right off the bat, I'll be taking over producer role this podcast because I'm smothered with the COVID. I might even mute my mic if I start laboring, if you can hear my labored breathing. So you might get a scattered quip maximum, but I'll just be agreeing and nodding and whatever else. So you can take it away there.
Yeah. Okay, well, you can practice your inner backbencher. We'll take it from there. I mean, today we're talking about a kind of a medley of things, but I mean, one of the things we were talking about was regionalization, which is a delightful jumble of nightmares to unpack. And I got to be honest, there's a lot of things in here that make some sense. There's a lot of things that could literally be solved with just changing the Municipalities Act. I mean, but our government, as they tend to do, likes to put the cart well before the horse and kind of jump the gun. And that's what I think they're doing with this. And I really believe that this is going to be a mess, and it's going to be very difficult to properly implement because no one really seems to have the experience with regional kind of government, like a county system like they have in Nova Scotia or what they have in other parts of the country or around the world, because we just don't have that in our kind of administrative culture. So I mean, I'm not sure what you guys would think.
Well, I mean, the number of different things going on there. We've had some conversation about sort of what works with regionalization. There's examples of things that work. I mean, there are examples where schools have been closed in communities, not necessarily because of the dwindling population, but because parents wanted better, we're talking back in the 80s and stuff, parents wanted better, more modern school facilities. So they all, government officials met with them. They saw what they would get out of it, and they, thought, hey, that's a good deal for our kids. So they went along with it and agreed to have their children bus some distance, which is often a bit controversial, right? But then you have other, like my attempt to regionalize the public library system, and that went absolutely nowhere. In part because we didn't have the buy-in from the term stakeholder group that were involved. I mean, the other element of it is the politics of it, right? I mean, there are opposition parties, or at least all the time in the legislature. So those people have an agenda, and rightly so, to critique the government and become the government by taking them down. So that's a legitimate part of the process here. So it always becomes politicized. The question is, do you have a plan to deal with that? And I don't know. I mean, right now, and I don't want to capitalize the conversation, but right now, the people who are speaking out strongly in favor of this are the government, municipalities that it will not affect, and people purportedly wouldn't mind paying any extra tax. I mean, I see a lot of people out there who don't mind this additional tax because they'll never pay it because they don't live in Trinity South or what have you, right? So it's fine and dandy to want somebody else to pay for something that they're not right now. And then, so turn this the other way, then you have the people who this is impacting, are there any indications that they have jumped on board yet? Because I haven't seen it. I've heard a couple of instances or read about it in the news where people are speaking out against it, and those are the people who are impacted on it. And the current government doesn't have a great record of instituting new taxes. First of all, there's been a lot of new taxes or increases in taxes, and they're unpopular. But if you just look at this garbage levy that was put on cabin owners people with basically second homes in some cases. I don't think that's an exaggeration on the Avalon Peninsula, and they all went berserk. They created an organization to fight against it, and in the end, the government conceded and took the tax off. And well, who knows what's going on with garbage in that situation? But there's a good example of a similar thing that went sideways. So, I mean, to date, I've gone back and looked at what the government said. It's all very tentative. I mean, it's not really. It seems like a game piece that they put on the table that's removed, like many things in the past. That's what I see. I don't see a whole lot of outpouring of citizen support, other than by people who think it's a good idea, and they'll never ever have to be impacted by it, other than driving through that road for that community or something.
Yeah, and that's very, very true. And like, I mean, if you look at, say, some of the NTV's done a few kind of pieces on it, and I mean, all you have is people who are against it. And I mean, like, listen, as someone who is in a town, you know, Stephenville's not that big a town, and according to what the working group recommends, you know, we're going to be impacted. Now, some people have been saying, like, we're going to be able to be exempt from this. It's not going to be like that. I don't think so. They've had their eye on kind of regionalizing the Stephenville, Kippens, Capes, Bay St. George area for a while. They've really wanted to do that, and like, and that's something that, you know, I covered in my other podcast, In the Trenches. I mean, with someone who is an elected municipal councillor. I mean, that's something that we spoke about. And I mean, like, if you think about how it's going to go down, there's going to have to be, in certain communities, a kind of a standardization, because I mean, when you combine different communities, you have to have one kind of set of kind of rules and standards and regulations in that. And so, what are we really going to take? Say, if I can only really use Stephenville. So I mean, if we're going to be Stephenville and Kippens, Stephenville has a fully functioning water and sewer kind of system. It's very well done. It's a $6-7 million system. Kippens has septic. So to standardize that, now we have the capacity, definitely, but to standardize that is going to cost a fortune. Because I mean, I mean, my God, it costs like $1 million to pave a road. How are you going to install pipes and sewers like all over?
They don't need.
So there are some municipalities that I'm aware of where, you know, they started down this road of water and sewer. One I'm thinking about in particular, I won't name, they had a really bad water quality in one part of this fairly sprawling, you know, small community, but sort of well spread out. Once they got the water and sewer put in for the people who had this acute water problem with their wells, well, the population started to decline. They didn't have the taxpayer base. The government hasn't been as willing to come to the table with free money. So in the end, they stopped doing that. So as a whole, like half the community there doesn't have water and sewer, but they're paying higher taxes to subsidize it, right?
Yeah.
And here's another example. I'm sort of smiling there because it's sort of tragic in a way. When the PCs were last in power, there was an attempt to amalgamate a number of communities. I won't name where again because I don't want to pick on these people. But what happened was, so the minister went out, the MHA for the area happened to be a minister. He went out and got all the people together and he said, okay, now what we're going to do is we want to merge these community councils because we're moving towards regionalization. They said, okay, they thought about it. They came back. They said, okay, what we want done, we want this road paved in this community. These are local roads, right? So get the province to cover the cost of the asphalt for this road in the other community and this road in the other community. Well, you know what happened? After the blacktop got put down that summer, no one talked about that again. Those people didn't run for council again because there was a certain amount of discontent about giving up their right to have their own council and so on. Didn't want that crowd up there, you know, running the show. So they walked away with their asphalt. So a lot of these things are very difficult to do, and I don't think there was any malice intended there. It's just that the government thought they could pay people off with asphalt, and they couldn't. But people were too keen, right? So these things have happened, and they could very well happen again. Either the government backs off. I mean, if they legislate it, and they can bring it in without, I guess, the consent of the local populations. Well, I guess that's what they'll do. They won't do much for the local MHAs the next time election comes.
French, you're going to say something?
Well, yeah, I wanted to say two things. Just as an example, it doesn't have to be standardized if you look at it, because I know in Springdale, we've got two different types. We've got people on water and sewer, and we've got people on artesian wells and septics. But they built their homes knowing that they were going to be on septic and water. About 10 years ago, when more people have moved there now, and there was a big uproar a few months ago because they were about to resurface the road going down there, and everyone said, well, where's our water and sewer? Why are you going to pave without giving us water and sewer? But thankfully, they already had the agreement in place, that the town's not going to put water and sewer in. We'll put in storm sewer, and that's as far as we're going. But another thing I wanted to talk about the locals. A prime example of this is there's a community on the south coast, accessible by ferry. In 99, they had a brand new water and sewer system put in. The only thing they were missing was the treatment facility for the water. So there's a community down there. They're all on sewer. They're paying for their sewer now. The council decided that after all the pipes were in the ground, they got fire hydrants and everything with no water to them, because the community council decided that, you know what, maybe we don't want to pay these taxes now. And, maybe we don't want to use that as our watershed now. We still want to go hunting, stuff like that. So the province, in my opinion, has got to take the bull by the horn, because it's just going to end up like this situation if they don't, Imagine.
Like they definitely they do. I agree. Now, kind of like to counter your point there about just some communities having kind of both systems. Now, usually I would agree with you on that. But Stephenville is very different in this regard, because there was a certain fellow who holds a certain position. Now, I'm not going to say who he is, but he wanted to have this property. He had a farm, and he wanted to have it, and it didn't have any connection to the water and the sewer system. And he said, it's okay, I just want to have septic there. So the town kind of came back and said, well, about that, you're not allowed, because the town regulations, the way they're done up, it doesn't make that possible. You have to be connected to the water and sewer, and to do that, it's going to cost a significant amount of money. The town doesn't really want to do that, so we don't want you to be on this property. And this fellow managed to get enough people to support him in a certain position. I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to say who he is, but he ended up getting elected to something or another. And that's the situation got put in limbo, and it's still there. It's kind of this weird in between where it's kind of like a municipal affairs twilight zone kind of a thing, or a municipal affairs purgatory. Like he can't get sewer, but he's still not allowed to kind of have the septic. I think the issue has never been resolved, and it's difficult for this fellow to actually do anything about it on his own, because of the position that he is in. And I personally, I don't care. The guy wants to have septic. That's not my problem. I mean, that's less. I don't want to pay whatever the fee was to have that put in, or pay it through my taxes. I mean, the town has a finite budget, but I mean that's just what I was saying there. But I can understand there's other issues too. Like the government has I think it's like a 10 and 90 kind of payment system there. Like certain communities put up so much money. And there's one community out here, Lords. So Lords doesn't have, I think it's Lords. It's one of those communities. It's somewhere around that Lords, Boswalis, Agatoon area. So they don't have they don't have enough money. And so yet the regulations require them to have something kind of set up. But how can you do that when you don't have the 10% required? So the government is saying, well, maybe you guys need to regionalize or amalgamate with another one of the communities. This is the Cape, though. They don't really like that. That's like asking Port aux Basques to amalgamate with Burn Islands. I mean, that's just asking for some kind of civil war to break out. It's or Marguerite and Isle of Mort. It's the same thing. People don't want to do that, and so the government is in this another weird position where I think that the reason they have a lot of this regionalization is to take these problems that these reluctancies between the communities, the lack of finance available, and they're just going to be like, there, you're all one big happy family, whether you like it or not. So get this problem fixed, get that problem fixed. We'll see you at election time. Peace out.
See, one thing that I wonder about this too is a taxpayer capacity to pay, right? So if you think about this from a different angle, some people are living in these areas because we might assume that they cannot afford to pay what it is I'm paying here in the East End of St. John's, right? So they're living in these unincorporated communities to evade that. So you're not going to change that by charging them, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to change my ability to pay for something by just charging me for it. I mean, what I earn is still going to be the same thing, what my income is. If you look at sort of the breakdown of who pays taxes in the province, I mean, there's a whole lot of people who have, who are living in something approximating poverty.
Yeah.
And in comparison to the people who make, upwards of $65,000, $75,000 a year, right? So those people are living in a difficult situation as it is. A lot of them are seniors. They're in that situation because of the structure of our economy in the past, right? I mean, if you were somebody who, I don't know, your first job was going to St. John's, Keaton House for someone in St. John's, and then you went on to be a housewife, well, there's no pensions involved in that outside of, whatever's provided federally or so on. It's not like me or public servants or people who are in a unionized workplace where they have a private sector pension fund. These people are already in a difficult situation, and giving them an extra $100 a month if you wanted to subsidize them is still not going to really change the situation because there's only the money is going in and it's going out, right? Yeah. I mean, what's the government going to do? Increase the income supplement so they can pay for the taxes? Because it just will cut out the middleman if that's the plan.
Well, that's right? Kind of what they did already there just recently. They just boosted that supplement and then said, hey guys, if you want to buy an electric car, now's the time. Knowing that, but I just got to quickly kind of inject on that's kind of what I was saying on that example is because it's really funny, by the way, that they want to have this electric car rebate and this and that and encourage people to have electric cars. A lot of communities do not have mechanics trained to own electric cars, so it's more like, no offense to Dale, it's more of a townie rebate than anything, I guess, if you want to use that kind of language.
Not even. It's more mainland thing because like a Tesla needs to be towed to an authorized garage with a flat tire. So, if you're down on the Batesville Highway with no cell service, and you've got to be towed just for a flat tire, no, boy, I'm going to stick with my gas car, thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, like CNA is starting to train people on these things too, but yeah, that'll take time to implement and stuff like that. But kind of getting quickly back to regionalization again, like one other kind of thing that they were saying in here is that they want the municipalities to kind of take over more of the things that the government should be doing, but really aren't doing or are reluctant to do, like economic development. Like, that's something that the provincial government generally plays the prominent role in. And now they're saying, okay, Stephenville, congratulations. You guys get to attract people. Okay, well, what other things do I get to attract economic development, new residents? Nothing, but we're letting you handle it because you guys somehow have the on-the-ground knowledge and ability to do that, but without any of the extra kind of subsidies or benefits that would require this. It's because the government has struggled so long with economic development. Well, that's because of a centralized economic system, but that's neither here nor there. And just they're not good at planning ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can say all that, but if you don't have the human resources, I mean, let alone of expertise, because you can have people who are not experts in those positions, but even if you don't have the person to, return the telephone calls and push the paper and respond to emails and all those sorts of things, if you don't have somebody in that role, so, I mean, the only way that municipalities will be able to do those sorts of things to accept the downloading from government is to increase the local tax to hire additional people to carry out those tasks that have been downloaded to them. So in the end, these are always interesting ideas, and could argue they are good ideas, but they are as yet unfunded ideas unless it's funded by increasing taxes or by both. I mean, and there's good things going on in some areas of the province, in Newfoundland, and potentially around the West Coast, gold mining and other deposits. There are good communities that will have the ability to do those sorts of things, but there's a whole lot that are
Northern
not.
Peninsula is a really good example of that. I mean, that area there is something that I've been giving a bit of a special interest in, because I really like economics. I think it's a fun it's a fascinating subject, and there is potential up there, but the population decline makes it so hard, because I think that's probably one of the biggest kind of population loss areas in the province. I mean, I remember like they were struggling for pretty much everything. I mean, I'm surprised they can get an MHA half the time, because I mean it's just it's hard enough to fill a council seat, let alone a House of Assembly seat. But I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done. Would it kind of hurt the treasury a little bit? Yes. But I mean, there has to be incentives. There has to be kind of an outside of the box thinking. And I know we hear those buzzwords all the time. This is the way forward, or this is I don't know, the new horizon for Newfoundland, or some other crap that they say. I got to find out who comes up with those titles, and I don't know, just tell them to try harder, because every one of them is always so corny.
I served in cabinet, and I never figured out who made those decisions, to be quite honest. It was never apparent. I mean, you'd be sitting there, not to divulge things that I shouldn't, but you'd be sort of sitting there, and they'd come in with the stuff, I mean, the marketing stuff for the budget, and they'd say, oh, here, look at it, and that was my level of input into it, and I never knew if that was the brain fart that came from the Premier himself, or was, the other cabinet that was operating somewhere,
the deep state,
in wherever. I mean, operating somewhere, not in the Confederation building, because that's always happening as well. Right? There's something, they have their own kitchen cabinet, and but I never knew the origins of these things. And to be honest, I had too much else to do to ask. I mean, if you want to call it the road ahead, or charting a course, or looking ahead instead of looking back, or whatever, I mean, that was the simplest part to sell, but I assume it's made in consultation with the communications people. But we've seen a very long unrolling, communications-wise, of this regionalization strategy, if you want to call it that. But we haven't seen a whole lot on the volume side, if you will. I want to keep going back to that, because I think, if you look at sort of where this has worked in communities like New West Valley, right? They obviously had a successful amalgamation there. But then in my lifetime, we've had successful amalgamations that were the blunt end of the instrument, right? If you think about just down the road from me here, Wedgwood Park used to be a separately incorporated municipality. And some of them still living down there is not very happy about what went on, right?
Well, look.
I think there's even a sign up there that says, well, Wedgwood Park. So, right? but they were like Clyde Wells again, and you can say what you want about Clyde Wells. Every politician has detractors of supporters, but I mean, he had a lot of courage.
That he did.
And that's what you really got to do. You got to have the courage at the top of the pyramid to follow through and to accept the fact that you're not always going to have everyone on side. That's just the nature of human nature. You've got to try and build a big enough a coalition to move it through. And I don't see any evidence of a coalition right now. I mean, some municipalities, the big ones, I would say, would like to have more power, right? They would like to have more power devolved to them. I'm not sure they want to have more expense devolved to them. So they've sort of embraced some of this. MNL has, but you don't see a lot of these unincorporated folks coming out and saying, "Okay, well, let's get rid of more of this now. That's excellent. I'll be able to pay more tax next year."
Oh, goody gosh! I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
You don't hear it.
A lot of these incorporated places have been all sucking off the teat anyway, because even if fire departments don't, well, other than Cornerbrook, we've seen a few years ago where they said they'd stop responding to one of the outlying communities. But, like, most fire departments are going to respond to a fire even if they don't pay for the fire service. But
there was one, speaking of that, and Jesus, my voice, sorry. But remember...
Yes, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. Yeah, and I mean, and Buddy watched the cars go up in flames and stuff in the garage or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that place, I don't know if you've ever been over there, but holy moly, I mean, I don't live in a house like that. I mean, those are chalets that were built for European and potentially, I suppose, American tourists, but certainly not for moles like us. So, I mean, those people chose to live there and to pay whatever, I think it's like a residence fee they pay to almost like a condo development that pays for snow clearing and so on. But there's no question those people who pay more. I don't think. I can't see how they could argue that. But then again, if you look at drive around some of these ones that are very rural and so on. And I don't see those people having similar capacity.
No, yeah, and it's a big issue, and I mean, like the biggest problem I have with this plan at the current incarnation of it, because I was involved in the last one, and I think that was when you were still in government. I think it was like the former mayor of Kippens, a fellow who used to talk about buses a lot. And that we all went to a meeting here, and those two got up and walked out the door, and that was the end of that discussion here on the West Coast. Because I mean, like it was they kind of tried to play it smart to us, but they were more like they feed you the answers. You know how those focus groups they have are the input groups. They kind of lead you along and get the answer that they want. But I mean, the thing that I don't like here is that it's a one size fits all for every single community. It's a defined number of regions. It's like 20. I think it's like 28 or 25 of them, and they're all within a certain amount of size. They all have the exact same kind of responsibilities and roles, and there's no taking into account the average wages in the area. There's no taking into account the amount of people who are on fixed incomes. There's so many different factors here that.
Curtis, did you notice in there, because I haven't really gone through anything about the provision of firefighting resources by the province, municipalities. I raise this because, in a way, we'll see in this budget how serious the government is about this plan, because so many times in the last say 20 years, because that's only how long I've read it. Government is unminded in any quest for regionalization by using these fire trucks and other firefighting resources as a political patronage tool. So, in the budget, there'll be something said about okay, we've got enough money for 7 fire, then you'll find out that later when it's announced that three of the seven fire trucks are in the district responsible for fire trucks. And then the other ones are given out almost exclusively to districts that are on the government side. Often for various sort of partisan, patronage sort of reason. And what this really does, there's a lot of this sort of like since the community pride because they have a new fire truck, they're the one that they have for the last 30 years. Not again. But what it often does is it further entrenches these communities and they have to have their own fire rather than their being more regional approach. So I think this budget, if you see things coming out of the next that will tell you about the serious government actually going through with this, because if you continue to do things like that, to hand out resources based on patronage and what's going to happen in the next municipal election or the next provincial election, then they're really undermining themselves, and you have to question the seriousness, because it's all pretty tentative, as I said. But that's one thing. I don't know if you agree or not, but in St. John's, we buy our own fire trucks and we pay taxes for that. But that's not the case in a lot of municipalities in the province.
Well, I mean, the thing about the difference kind of between a lot of communities and St. John's was that St. John's population is increasing, and there with the increase gives them that kind of ability to purchase a lot more than say Stephenville could. But I mean, there is nothing specifically mentioned about the provision of fire services. I think it's more of a kind of a broad thing. So it's like once we've regionalized, the provision of services will follow. And mostly what they actually talk about is more about the people not paying their fair share, quote unquote, and about drinking water. That's kind of the two main arguments. So other than and a lot of grieving about the LSDs, which I mean, I don't really understand, because like I said earlier, this could be any problem with the LSDs can be solved by just giving them powers under the Municipalities Act. It's just adding power. Same with joint regional councils. Same thing. There's
the fair share argument is a bit of a slippery slope too, right? Because if you think about, again, here in St. John's, I mean, there's, the Paul Reynolds Recreation Center down the road. I mean, it has a swimming pool and all this other stuff that many municipalities couldn't afford. I mean, there's people here, friends of mine, who would say, well, why am I paying for that? Because they don't have any kids who go to swimming lessons down there, and they don't swim down there, and they don't use the other facilities that are down there, the basketball courts and so on. So, you should pay your fair share. So in their thinking, the fair share is that I should have to pay a larger user fee up front to use those services, right? So, I mean, one person's fair share is not another person's fair share per se, right? It's all about your perspective, where you're sitting.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because I mean, like in Stephenville, we have similar things. We have the Regional Aquatic Center, we have the other kind of sports and entertainment facilities here that are generally under a sharing. So the certain communities share. That recently has changed a little bit. I don't know all the details about it, but that's something that's coming up now. Maybe with the exciting new economic development that's been promised since September for Stephenville, maybe we won't have to worry about funding from other communities, because the blessings will rain down upon us like manna. It'll from drones. Yes, the drones will deliver the manna to us. It won't even rain down from heaven. God will just give the manna to the drones. It'll just land to us, and we will be this new, I guess, I don't know, saltwater Wakanda, Dubai kind of thing that that we've been told.
I don't know. I think a lot of people in the province who are paying any attention to that airport situation over there are just either smirking or shaking their heads or both. I mean, it just seems this whole business about social media and the whether or not the airport has been renamed and so on. I mean, it's like some people say only in Newfoundland, right? I mean, it's like a joke.
It is. I mean, like I can draw some parallels to some experiences I've had in South America, but I mean, I'm not going to go there. But I mean, like it is a very kind of like to shift the topic a little bit. I mean, it is a very kind of interesting discussion because I mean, you have this narrative that a lot of the discoveries that the CBC made are fake news. They're not correct. The government doesn't really want to see Stephenville succeed because Deer Lake. The ministers won't show up because this and that. But I mean, I don't like I've been around politics most of my life. I've been in two different political parties. I tried to start my own. That was a fun couple of months, and there was just and so I have a bit of a perspective. And I mean, for me, if I was an MHA or a cabinet minister, and somebody said, "Do you want to come to this announcement? We're going to announce, hundreds of millions of dollars in investment and thousands of jobs." I don't care whose district it's in. I'm going down there. I'm getting as much free bread as I can shove in my suit, and I am going to be so overjoyed about this. But the fact that the government is very mum on it, like when they asked Minister Parsons about it, he just goes, well, it's a private issue between two groups." That was the red flag going off for me. I was getting my hard hat on because that was everything coming down, and because the ministers are not going to turn that down. I mean, they're not going to turn down thousands of jobs for Deer Lake. I mean that because that benefits Deer Lake in a way too in economic terms, because that creates competition between the Stephenville Airport and the Deer Lake Airport, and everyone wins. So
The only thing that's missing from this airport thing over there right now is Kenny Rogers or some other celebrity, because it just smells like the sprung greenhouse all over. The minute that any assets turned over, I think that's really going to be where there's going to be a problem, because all it is right now is more or less a form of entertainment for political watchers. I mean, let's face it, and again, this is off the topic, but the Deer Lake Airport is situated in an area right where it can take in more of the population center. It's closer to Corner Brook. It's closer to the Northern Peninsula. It's closer to some communities it might have flights that people in central Newfoundland would take. It's a hub, and so on and so on. And there's something like 20,000 people a year prior to the pandemic were going through there. So its success is, it didn't happen on its own, I'm sure, but it is a successful airport. And the same didn't happen with Stephenville, even though it's a great facility. I don't know. I mean, the reasons in part are because of location and then the population capacity that's, in the catchment area.
Definitely. And like I can state for the record that I have no kind of inside knowledge or special knowledge about this. Like it's everything that I've ever been looking at it. I've looked at it through like CBC articles, a bit of sleuthing. I mean, it's not hard to really look up this company online. The internet age is here. So I mean, like I don't know anything kind of that Joe Blow down the road would know if he typed it into Google. But I mean, if you find that much information comes out that kind of says maybe not everything is as it seems, I mean that does give you a bit of stop for pause. And I mean, like when I was running, I ran the last municipal election. I got a joke though. I got the best vote that I've ever had, but it was also the best number. I got 420. I don't smoke it, but I mean, light it up. I mean, I was saying, like, I got a light up I got a joint of a vote count.
How many would you have had to get in order to go over the top?
About 800. But the previous election before that, I only had like 230. So, I mean, not a bad boost. I mean,
Doubling
Doubling
is
is good, but I mean, I've had my run at it. As you know, I mean, every election takes a bit out of you. So
good.
I'm pretty worn out with it now. I still love my politics, but I mean, I don't think I'm going to be looking for a municipal seat anytime soon. But no, like when I was going around, people were asking me how do you feel about this? Like, are you excited? And maybe this was what didn't help me. I was honest. I said, look, I said, there's things here. I'd love to see this happen. First of all, I want something like this to happen because it benefits the whole region. But at the same time, I said, the promises seem a bit grand. The timeline seems a bit short. There's a lot of kind of questions here. And I said, I can't tell you that this is going to happen. But I said, if I'm on council, I said, I will do what I can to make sure that this happens, that it works and things like that. Because I mean, that's what you want. Um, but I'll say this though, the hardest thing was watching, like, because there was certain people caused a bit of speculation, and that makes people make certain decisions that are, maybe at first seem like a great idea, but down the road you're kind of screwed. So I had one guy come to me and say, like, hey, listen, I turned down a job in Ontario. Do you think I made the right move? And I try and be honest. I said, honestly, I said, I can't tell you yes or no. I can't, because if I tell you yes and something and this doesn't happen, I was like, I gave you false hope. But I said, if I tell you no and it does happen, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. But I said, honestly, I said, I don't know. I personally, I said, I probably wouldn't have turned it down. And that guy got pretty sad about it. Like, he wasn't mad at me, but he was very upset. And he was telling me the story and that. And I tell you the truth, that was probably one of the harder kind of conversations I had to deal with on the campaign, and hearing.
The truth of the matter will be when, if any financing, materializes
Yes.
for this. There seems as though no provincial or federal politicians have indicated any interest in putting public funds into it, like unlike the aquaculture operations or other, businesses that have had, public sector financing. So, but we'll have to see. Going back to this whole business of regionalization, as I sort of alluded to before, I think the next key point in this is going to be the provincial budget, and is that this week?
No,
No,
I think it's in April. And
okay, yeah. So that will be the key. That will tell a lot about sort of where they're going in terms of what they are funding, and then what they're choosing not to fund.
Yeah,
right? Because if the strategy is that local taxpayers or municipal level taxpayers are going to pay more, then at some point this has to realize savings for the province, right? So it may not be in this budget year, but all the budgets include some out years. So unless you see like a savings, well, I mean, recently one of the things that I've noticed, and again, since 2015, it's been like we're going to save this money, and now we're going to reinvest it in something else, right? That's not really any saving. Because if you're truly going to save, then you'd assume people would either start paying less tax, government would do less, or something to that effect. Because that's saving money, but you can just continuing to spend it on something else. Say the municipalities budget just continues to increase, but beyond rate of inflation, then you have to really question.
Definitely. And I'm glad you kind of touched on the budget there, because when the budget is released, on my other show, we're actually having the Canadian Taxpayers Federation on for that. They've been a guest on my my show a few times, and I can already imagine my friend Renaud just getting out the pen of negativity to kind of go through everything with a fine tooth comb. But I'm yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a reason to be skeptical, isn't there? I mean, when the current premier was seeking the leadership of this party, there was a lot of rhetoric about having to make difficult decisions. And, well, I'm not sure what they have been to date, because COVID intervened, so there was a massive amount of spending associated with that. So, the difficult decisions are not apparent in any of the budgetary decisions since then. So we've heard about the difficult decisions, but we haven't really seen what they are or what they're potentially going to be. And one of the things about the whole budget making process in government, the decisions are largely determined by the time you get to, say, the middle of January. Really, I mean, the busy work happens in the fall, where sort of the bureaucracy is putting together proposals. It goes to Treasury Board. They make the recommendation to the cabinet, and then it goes, from there. Then they start boxing it up into, the budget with the slogan that we were talking about before. So, if there were difficult decisions that were being made, I assure you, we'd be hearing bits and pieces about what the plan is, right? Oh. Because it will be seeping out, right? And like the previous fall and the one before that, I, for one, haven't heard anything about there being something transformational.
Definitely, but I mean, that kind of defines the Fury premiership. I mean, he doesn't really come out and say, "I'm making this decision here." It's always kind of deferred. It's these committees. I've got the Premier's economic recovery team. I've got the health accord people. It's kind of other kind of groups that I can push the grief onto. And then when the reports are released, I can just say, okay, I like this. I don't like. How does that feel? Okay, the public says that's a bad idea. I'm not going to even talk about that thing. And that's he's very reluctant to engage on any kind of serious grounds, and that's one thing I find very flawed about him. And honestly, I never thought I would say this. I think that if we had Chess Crosby win in the next election, in the last
before, but we'll see.
And
I saw the number up at that time. Does that mean we're out of time?
I think it might have stopped recording.
Yeah.
Just let me interject here for 1 second, guys. No, that was, I don't know what the hell happened at about minute 37. Can you guys hear me? Hello? Okay. No, sorry.
Okay.
Well,
minute 37 or so. We'll for some reason stopped. We're going again there now, so I'll just splice them together later on. So
it's always
continue as if you were normal.
Stream.
I don't know if it's the platform itself, but
well, remember the one you did on In the Trenches?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. The first one went. Well, I was talking with their tech. I was talking with their tech for a couple of times, and they said they had it figured out.
It's either, it's either
I don't know, man. There's a gremlin in there somewhere.
There's like a drone or something.
Whatever the hell it is.
The signal.
Well, I think one of the key things that we're talking about here that I think is important.
I should be able to add them in. Man, sorry guys, I'm not.
The next this budget and what comes out of what is sort of shown, foreshadowed in future budgets, that will really tell something about the seriousness about regionalizing government and downloading these particular government activities, whether it's economic development or what have you, whether that's reflected in the budget numbers or not. If it's not, and they continue to have this sort of politicized allocation of firefighting resources and other sorts of things, then you can probably say that it's not going to be a significant deviation from what has been done in the past. And for me, I mean, I don't, as we've been talking about, there was a lot of discussion about difficult decisions that were going to be made by the current regime, but haven't really seen that. I think COVID is probably, that would be the argument that I would make, that, we had a global pandemic health emergency, and so now we're supposed to be getting back to normal. So does that mean we're getting back to the difficult decision phase of what's supposed to happen? Or are we going to have more reports like the PERT and the health accord and the this and the that and so on, and a lot of stalling until the current premier goes on to wherever it is he's on his way to? Because I don't really see this as sort of I don't know, I mean, you have your own opinion on it, but I just see the premier's office as a way station to somewhere else, wherever that may be. So and I don't think it's back to practicing healthcare. I was wrong that one time before, so I might be wrong again. But so we'll see. The budget will tell us a lot of things. It'll tell us a lot about regionalization, and it will tell us about the direction. Do we continue to tax and spend and borrow at the rate that we've been going, which is pretty significant if you look across the country, the amount we spend on healthcare, for example, whether or not that sort of thing is going to continue, or whether, it's going to be a change of course. So stay tuned. I mean, we can revisit the conversation after that, because I think we'll know a lot more then.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like one thing now, if you want I'm going to give kind of a prediction on the budget. I think it's going to be kind of more as she goes, but I think that the government is going to say, listen, because of the price of oil and the windfall that we've gotten from it, because we budgeted oil at $65 a barrel. Now it's up to like over 100, I think now, or whatever it is, and so they're going to be like, well, listen, we as a government have listened to you. We're going to use this money towards a few things, probably not towards the middle class taxpayers. It's going to be more of a lower
107 almost again now,
kind of people on subsidies and that kind of supports. So you might see a little bit more than what they were offering with this recent announcement. Like the $20 a person or something like that, or per annual addition to their paycheck or something. It wasn't very much money. I remember that. I saw a lot of kind of outrage on that, but either here nor there. I think it's going to be mostly steady as she goes. They're going to come up with the excuse that, we can't invest money into certain things because deficit. We can't lower certain taxes because we have the deficit. That's the albatross around our necks, and
I'd say the talking point is Muskrat Falls. That's the constant. We had to pay for Muskrat Falls, so that's why it's raining outside.
Yeah.
We have to pay for Muskrat Falls, so that's why your car broke down. I'm being flippant, but everything.
It's Muskrat Falls.
It's like when Mike Harris was Premier of Ontario. If it wasn't sunny out, then it was a teacher's fault. That sort of thing. Muskrat Falls is the teacher to this government. In comparison to what Mike Harris was like, everything gets blamed on not teachers, but Muskrat Falls, and that's the reason we're in the situation we're in. I mean, again, it's easy for me to say sitting outside, you could argue that no, if you have that problem, then the next sentence is, and here's what we're going to do to fix that. And if you don't hear that, all we continue to hear is Muskrat Falls is a continuing disaster. So you're not going to hear a whole lot about that being not blamed on itself. The other thing about the oil, by the way, I mean, the finance minister has been sort of telegraphing that production is down significantly. So that means there's really not going to be this huge amount of money. So we'll see. I mean, if they take it and they spend it on new programs, then really that's just putting outlays in the budget that we're going to have to be responsible for years to come, or at least until there's a change of government. But if that happens again, that's just really more of what we've seen over, at least, the best part of the last 10 years, if not the last 20 years, which is more taxation, more spending, more borrowing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that we're going to have to address that problem because our population is declining too rapidly for us to kind of say like we can kick this can down the road. And I know the government is trying to set up that help desk in Poland for Ukrainians, and bring a large amount in. Like me personally, from a policy standpoint, I don't generally like to rely solely on immigration as a kind of a hopeful kind of change the situation, because if people aren't staying here as residents, it's hard for me to imagine once somebody gets established in Canada, gets certain certifications recognized. It's hard for me to believe that they're just going to be like, you know what, this place is incredibly expensive and there's really no perks to it. The hell with it. I'm just going to stay here anyway and make a go of it.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I fully support immigration. I think we should take in refugees. I think we should have a humanitarian approach. But I don't think that we should somehow believe that that comes without cost, at least up front. Immigration and settlement has a cost. That's why there's a line in the budget for it.
Yes.
The other thing is, there's a lot more of a diverse population here in St. John's, but I don't know the degree to which that exists, in Trinity North. And I don't know if people from, Ukraine or elsewhere are going to move here, and then all of a sudden they're going to say, well, I think I'll go out and live in one of those unincorporated municipalities that are going to now have to pay more taxes because I like it in Trinity North or, Trinity South or what have you. So a lot of times what happens is that people come here from other countries, they get settled away with all of their children, schooling, and so on. They realize that there's larger communities of common interest, people of similar background, language, culture, religion, etc., who live in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and perhaps other population centers, and then they go and there's no Ukrainian cultural center here in St. John's, but by God, there's more than one, I would say, in Toronto. And I've lived in neighborhoods like that where you go to the liquor store, you go to the beer store, and they got beer from Poland in that community, and you go down the road, and in the beer store they got beer from Italy because that's the immigrant population that they have there, and other food services and stuff that cater to those populations. We have some of that here in St. John's today, but we don't have it. So again, I think we need to have immigration. There's no doubt about that, but it's not a panacea. And a lot of the people who come here, they don't stay. Now, if you look at what's going on across the Gulf in Nova Scotia, they're having a lot greater success in retaining that population that comes there. So why is that? I have no idea, but maybe we should find that.
Oh, definitely. Like I completely agree. And kind of a fun fact, actually, Stephenville, I think outside of St. John's Stephenville area has the highest amount of Ukrainians in the province. We have like 40. So that's been that. So there is a plan or an idea that we're going to try to attract a lot around here. And personally, you know what? I like that. I have no, like same as you, I have no problems with immigration in and of itself. I believe that it's one of the tools in the toolbox to kind of help the situation in not just the province, but within the country with certain kind of situations. But I mean, I'm just not going to sit there and wave the flag and be like, as soon as they land here, it's just going to be prosperity. Because I mean, like you said, there is a cost up front. Now, is it one that we can bear? Definitely, I believe, because if we play it right, the returns in the long run are immense. And
Yep.
And I mean, like as someone who wants to retire in South America, I'm all for immigration. That's all I can really say. But I mean, kind of, I guess, wrapping it up as we kind of go into a bit of a close here. Like. There's a lot of things with the regionalization that I really want to see, but I really want them to just try changing the act, because I mean, you don't need to get a big public consensus to change the Municipalities Act. Like I said earlier, giving a bit more power to the local service districts. Give them the ability to tax, give them the ability for land use planning. Same with the unincorporated areas. Well, if for them, turn them into LSDs, add them to other LSDs, incorporate them. Sure, if you have to, you have to offer something that makes that attractive, and makes that desirable. But just saying that we're going to have this cookie cutter kind of layout of regional governments, which may or may not add a new layer. They say it doesn't, but it does. It's a really weird and interesting kind of idea they have. And like I said on my other podcast, we I know Goof is just like, oh, he's saying it again, but I mean, on the other uh, on the other one, I mean, we approach it in a lot more kind of detail from a rural West Coast perspective, and it's yeah, it's not favorable to an extent. I mean, we like a lot of it, but there's
Mhm.
like I said, my whole summed it up was change the damn act, and
Yeah. Here's what In the end, go back to what I said before. You have to find a way to convince people that this is in their best interest. If the approach is that you're not paying your fair share, and somehow the subtext is that you're a freeloader, well, that's not a positive way to frame this. And again, this whole business about paying your fair share, it's all in terms of your perspective. And there's people, like I said, people I know in St. John's who would argue that we shouldn't have these recreation facilities that are being built by the city. Because or if we are, then the people who use them, like me, or my child is going to swimming lessons there, or using the other recreation facilities, or any adults who use them, that they should be paying a higher upfront user fee, and it shouldn't be subsidized by municipal taxpayers in the city who don't use those services. That's a point of view, and it's a reasonable point of view. I don't agree with it, but it is a reasonable point of view. So again, it's all about buy-in, and it's about having most people come along, because otherwise, what you're going to have, a political backlash that's going to very quickly be on the back of the local MHAs, who it's like inertia. I mean, MHAs generally want to get reelected unless they're retiring. So they've become a political problem, and then does that become a political problem, like the regionalization of library services, like the levy of the garbage fee on these cabin owners on the Avalon Peninsula, or what have you? Does it become another one of those issues where the government decides, well, wait a minute, all sound good on paper. There was a lot of people who aren't going to be paying those taxes who thought it was a good idea, but the people who are supposed to be paying these new taxes and fees now, well, they don't think it's a good idea. So should we just, not do it and leave it to the next crowd that comes along in another government and let them deal with it? Because that's what's been done in the past. The buck gets passed to the next generation of legislators in the House, and so we'll see. I don't see a whole lot of evidence right now that there's a groundswell of support in these unincorporated areas to pay more, because arguably there's a reason why they live there, and one of those reasons is going to be because they don't have the capacity to pay more somewhere else already. So just charging them, well, don't expect a positive result if you don't have a buy-in from them. So it's a long-winded way of saying, I'm skeptical about how this is going to turn
well,
out.
I actually I do have to agree with you on that, honestly, and like, if you want kind of my final opinion of it, I think that it's going to end up like the last attempt of regionalization. It's mostly gonna get swept under the rug because there's like you said, I mean, there's not a groundswell of support for this. People do not see this as something that is palatable to them. And I think what's going to be required, and probably what our Premier will do, he'll probably do what he does all the time. He will convene a new task force, and he shall scatter them abroad, or send them out and say, "Go on, do my bidding, and figure out how we can fix this problem, and so that I may obtain the credit." And someone in Ottawa will keep me in mind when someone retires in the Senate. Something like that. But I mean, like, it's a complicated situation, but nothing in Newfoundland is easy. I mean, this is a unique place. Every part of this province is somewhat culturally different than another part of the province. I mean, St. John's had that, the Avalon has that more, Irish kind of background and history. The West Coast is more blended. I mean, it's more Indigenous, Acadian kind of background, and so on and so forth. Except for Port aux Basques, which is a little Church of England bastion, which is really unique for me. I always found that kind of part interesting about Port aux Basques. You have this sea of one kind of group, and then it's Port aux Basques. But I just love where I'm from. So that's just me kind of rambling on for a second. But no, but like things here are just, they're so varied.
Scottish background.
Well, more like it's actually weirdly enough, there's actually a population from Gibraltar. So yeah,
Okay.
and Jersey and a couple other kind of places. It's very Anglo, but that's just how it is there. It's just how it came about. For a place that's called Port aux Basques, which is supposed to be started by Basque fishermen, there's not a lot of people who speak Spanish, speak Basque, or practice, the traditional religion of Spain.
I'll say there's no.
Yeah. I think there's like 3 Catholics when I was growing up, and the rest of them were all like Anglicans and that. But I mean, it's just a curious kind of side note. But kind of I guess to kind of close it out here. It's going to be interesting to see how they proceed with this. I think there's potential, but I believe that the way they're rolling it out or trying to is not going to make it work. And I think that unless they kind of tackle some of these problems individually, in terms of granting further powers to the LSDs and the joint councils, I think that it's going to be a problem if they don't do that. If I'm making any kind of sense here.
No, I hear you. It'll all hinge on the budget. You might need LSD after that comes down. So we'll see.
yes. Well, I mean, I tell you this, I'm definitely going to need a beer. But and I've already got several stocked just in case. I've got my budget stout stocked and ready. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I just trying to stifle a cough, actually.
If you want there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys, for the lack of interaction. And there's a couple of times I wanted to interject, but I'm just a freaking mess. I shouldn't have. I know we couldn't really postpone it anymore. I shouldn't have even attempted this, but
well, there we go. You don't want to.
Well, I got to go lie down for a couple of hours.
Yes, so I guess.
Well, get better. I hope you feel better.
Definitely. Well, I.
Oh well, thanks, man.
Well,
yeah, I can't feel any worse.
So, but I mean, appreciate.
I thought it was getting better, man. It's progressively worse every day. It was weird. But go ahead. Sorry.
No. I'm just glad. I'm hoping you get better quickly as well. And.
Well, the next one, I'll make up for it next podcast. I guarantee you. Whichever topic we decide on, ultimately, I'll make up for it next time.
No problem. I'm just glad to have be involved in it. And Dale, thank you so much for coming on.
Good to have a chat.
Yeah, it was great, man. Yeah.
Take care.
Same to you. Alrighty, thanks. See you now.